Although birds, bats, and other creatures are also pollinators, insects are the animals that do the bulk of the pollination that affects our daily lives. How, you might ask? Pollinators play a crucial role in flowering plant reproduction and the production of most fruits and vegetables. Examples of crops that are pollinated include apples, squash, and almonds. Without the assistance of pollinators, most plants cannot produce fruits and seeds. Now, in the United States, pollination by honeybees, directly or indirectly, contributed to over $19 billion of crops in 2010. Pollination by other insect pollinators contributed to nearly $10 billion of crops in 2010. So what is pollination? Pollination results when the pollen from the male part of the flower or the stigma is moved to the female part of the same or another flower, the stigma, and fertilizes it, resulting in the production of fruits and seeds. Some flowers rely on wind to move pollen, while others rely on animals to move pollen. Animals visit flowers in search of food and sometimes even mates, shelter, and nest-building materials. Some animals, such as many bees, initially collect pollen, while others, such as many butterflies and birds, move pollen accidentally because the pollen sticks to their body while they're collecting nectar from the flowers. All of these animals are considered pollinators. So what is nectar and pollen? Nectar is a sugary fluid secreted by plants, especially within flowers, to encourage pollination by insects and other animals. It is collected by bees to make honey. And what is pollen? Pollen is a fine powdery substance, typically yellow, consisting of microscopic grains discharged from the male part of the flower or from the male cone. Each grain contains a male gamete that can fertilize the female ova, to which pollen is transported by the wind, insects, or other animals. Although birds, bats, and other creatures are also pollinators, insects are the animals that do the bulk of the pollination. And there are 5 main groups of insect pollinators. Solitary bees, honeybees, may be the most widely known, but they represent a tiny fraction of the bee species. Worldwide, there are an estimated 20,000 species of bees, and approximately 3,600 bee species are native to the United States and Canada alone. Of these murad bee species, more than 90% lead a solitary rather than a social life. Bumblebees are important pollinators of wild flowering plants and agricultural crops. They are able to fly in cooler temperatures and lower light levels than many other bees, making them excellent pollinators, especially in high elevations and latitudes. They are characterized by their rounded, fuzzy bodies and their ability to perform buzz pollination, which involves grasping a flower in their jaws and vibrating their wing muscles to dislodge the pollen. Many plants, including a number of wildflowers and crops like tomatoes, peppers, and cranberries, benefit from buzz pollination. Because they are essential pollinators, the loss of bumblebees can have a far-ranging ecological consequences. Butterflies and moths are valuable pollinators, supporting the health of the ecosystems and agriculture. As with many other insect species, butterflies and moths in the U.S. are experiencing significant declines. 19% are at risk of extinction, including species with special habitat needs, and generalist species that were once widespread. Sadly, this includes the iconic monarch butterfly, which has experienced dramatic declines in populations both east and west of the Rocky Mountains. Wasps are wrongly maligned due to a reputation for being aggressive. In reality, they are adept hunters that we wouldn't want to live without. They are doing us all a great service by keeping insect populations in balance and managing pests. They are counted among the many beneficial insects that we can be utilized for conservation biological control. From an evolutionary standpoint, bees are simply wasps that have adapted to a vegetarian diet. Many wasps are smooth-bodied and do not actively collect pollen. Those with hairs lacks the branched pollen-trapping hairs found on most bees, making them relatively minor pollinators of most plants. Nonetheless, they do provide some incidental pollination, carrying and dropping some pollen grains as they move among the flowers. With over 85,000 species worldwide, flies form one of the most diverse orders of insects. Diphtheria, although a number of these species are reveled as crop pests and carriers of disease, many are beneficial, from the aquatic midges that serve as an abundant food source for migratory birds to fly pollinators of apples, peppers, mangoes, and cashews. Because flies are generalist foragers with no nest or to provisions and sometimes sparsely haired bodies, they don't get much credit as significant pollinators. However, they can be important pollinators for specific plants. Beetles are the most diverse group of organisms in the world. In fact, approximately 1 in every 4 species of plant, animals, bacterium, or fungus that has been described is a type of beetle. As might be expected in such a large group, beetles are quite diverse in color, shape, and ecological role. Fossil records suggest that beetles, along with flies, were probably the first insect pollinators of prehistoric flowering plants in the late Jurassic era, around 150 million years ago. Beetles are still pollinators of many flowers, such as magnolias and water lilies, though whose flowers harken back to more ancient forms. A recent study of the status of pollinators in North America by the National Academy of Sciences found that populations of honeybees, which are not native to North America, and some wild pollinators are declining. Declines in wild pollinators may be a result of habitat loss and degradation, while declines in managed bees is linked to disease, introduced parasites, and pathogens. So what can we do? You can plant a pollinator garden. Most obvious need for pollination species is a diversity of nectar and pollen. You can choose plants that flower at different times of the year to provide nectar and pollen sources throughout the growing season. You can plant in clumps rather than single plants to better attract pollinators. Provide a variety of flower colors and shapes to attract different pollinators. You can find information on types of flowers that different pollinator groups like bats, hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies find attractive. You can consider the following when choosing plants for your garden. Wherever possible, choose native plants. Native plants will attract more native pollinators and can serve as larva host plants for some species of pollinators. You can contact your local or state Native Plant Society for help. If monarch butterflies live within your area, consider planting milkweed so that the caterpillars have food. Now, I certainly hope you enjoyed this little information on pollinators. You never knew they were just so important to our society, but they really are. Okay, have a great day.